have to always remember, whenever we do not prioritize our lives, we give the green light and okay for someone to come in, take control, take that power, and prioritize our lives for us. So you have to be able to prioritize your life for what works for you. No one, and I truly mean no one, is going to know what works for you because no one is you. A lot of us could put on a show, we could put on a smile, we can get up here and, put our best foot forward, and we could be dying and depleted inside, right? And no one will ever know. And I truly mean no one. Not your spouse, not your mother, not your siblings, not your kids, whoever it is, they will not know unless we speak up and say, I'm not good. I've been suffering in silence. I feel anxiety. I feel depression. I feel anger. I feel resentment. I feel depleted. I feel tired. I feel unheard. I feel used. Sometimes you could say that to people the closest to you and they're like, what? Because they don't know. You put on a good act. So remember, it's up to you to prioritize your life. Do not let others do it for you. Hey, my beautiful souls. Welcome back to Be Penny with Jessie, the life coach. So guys, today we are going to be diving into a little bit deeper about saying no without feeling guilt or shame, because it's such a loaded topic and so many people don't even realize. Like, they realize that they can't say no to certain situations and people and things. Like, they have a hard time saying no without feeling guilt or shame, so they usually get themselves involved in things that they want to say no to, but they do not. But they don't know why, and they don't know how to change it. And there's a reason for that, and it's because it's so deeply rooted into patterns and behaviors that people don't even realize. So today we're going to be taking it apart, critically thinking, breaking it down, and hopefully making sure that we are removing ourselves from these types of mindsets and changing our programming that's surrounding it, so we can make sure that we're saying yes to things that fill us up and no to things that drain us. So first things first is we are going to break down the word guilt. It's a word that we say a lot, but I don't think people really put a lot of emphasis on really thinking about what it truly means and applying that into how we feel. So the definition of guilt is having committed a specific or implied offense, crime, or wrongdoing. And when you think about that in regards to our feelings when we don't want to say no because we feel guilty, it doesn't really make much sense, right? People invite us somewhere and we're afraid to say no because we feel guilty, as if we did something wrong or we committed an offense or we committed a crime, right? Like, what crime are you committing besides the crime you're doing to yourself? Because every time you say yes to something you don't want to say yes to and you really want to say no, you're actually saying no to yourself. And a lot of people don't think of it that way, but every time we give energy and we give ourselves to something that we really want to say no to, but we don't have the courage, and we feel like we're going to be judged or people are going to view us a different way, or we're trying to please other people, that's what we're doing. We're literally giving to them and taking away from ourselves. We're saying, yeah, we're going to do this for you and I'm going to take away from myself. And that depletes us. And we want to make sure that we are not doing that, right? We need our energy, we need our vital source to make sure we are completing all our tasks, whether it's our organizing tasks, whether it's time for our family, whether it's time for ourselves, whether it's time to dedicate to our emotions, whether it's time for us to be alone with ourselves. Every time you give to something that you do not want to give to, or you don't have the energy to give to it, you say no to yourself. And that's an important mindset for a lot of people to comprehend, because a lot of people don't think of it that way. And that's why I said we're going to break this down in a critical thinking way, because that's the way we get down to the root and find out what is behind the reason why we can't do something. And like I said, with guilt, it comes loaded. When we can't say no to certain things and we feel guilt and shame, it usually falls in certain categories. And the first one is going to be people pleasing. A lot of people are constantly people pleasing because they are not able to stand in their authentic selves and authentic power. A lot of people choose to people please because they're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of being viewed a certain way. They're afraid that the opportunity might not come around. They're afraid that people might not stick around. They feel they gotta buy sometimes people's love by, just giving to them in an unconditional way, or what they view as unconditional, but what it really is depleting and taking away from themselves. So it's not really unconditional. What it is toxic. But since a lot of people don't view it that way and they've been conditioned whether socially or by their family dynamics, to believe this is the way it is, then we're constantly giving to another. If you really think about it, a lot of people are raised, and society makes us believe that it's very selfish to think of ourselves, for us to put ourselves first. And there's different ways that you can put yourself first. There's a lot of people who only think about themselves, and they do it in a selfish manner. And there's a way to put yourself first, that you're thinking about your self-care, that you're not compromising yourself and you're not depleting yourself. So they're two different things. But a lot of people like to lump them all together. So anytime that we think about ourselves and our needs, it comes out as selfish. And people want us to people please. They want us to give to others even though it's taken away from ourselves. So there's many reasons why people please, but that's a big one. When you do not know yourself and you're not confident in standing your own ground and walking your own path, and you're afraid of what others are going to think about you, and if they're judging you and if they're viewing you the same way, you're always going to fall into people pleasing. So when you think about the reasons why you can't say no, and if that's one of them, that's something that you have to work on. And that's why this whole exercise, when you talk about saying no and not being able to do it without feeling guilt or shame, it goes deeper than just not being able to say no. It's something about you that you need to be able to grasp, be able to heal, and be able to retrain your mind to be able to give back to you. In other words, it's a big form of personal development. I know for me, this was an issue, a big issue years ago, of not being able to say no. And it's because I was so groomed and conditioned to people please. Not only was I being people pleasing, but I was also very codependent in the form that I felt that I was responsible for everybody else's happiness. And once I realized that that was such an inaccurate way of me thinking, and how much it was depleting me and taking away from me, and sometimes I'm winding up resentful and upset, of how I'm giving and giving and giving and nobody's reciprocating. But I had to come to the realization that whose fault was that? That was my fault, because I was not laying down the foundation. I was not setting the boundaries. I was not the one speaking up for myself and saying, no, I cannot do this. And I was letting myself being constantly manipulated, emotional manipulated. And that's the next one we're going to come to. So if you grew up in a family dynamics, or you've been groomed and conditioned to be emotionally manipulated, and this happens a lot in family dynamics, right? You must go to that party because, it's your brother's birthday party and you must go, and you must come to Christmas because that's what families do. And you have to give this to me because I'm your mother and I made all these sacrifices. So of course, if I ask you to do something, you must jump and run. All of that is forms of emotional manipulation. Anytime a sentence starts with, but I did this for you, I gave this to you. What about all the things I did for you? What about all the things I have given you? What about the times that I was there for you? That is going to fall into the category of emotional manipulation. You have to understand, when you willingly give something to someone, there should be no expectations tied to it at all, at all. Like if I want to gift you a gift, let's say I want to give you money, then I need to be able to give that from the bottom of my heart, truly from my heart, and not tied to an expectation that when I need you, that you have to be there. The expectation that is you're going to be there because I did this favor for you, or I gave you this money. So that means anytime I need you to do something, no matter what the condition is, no matter how it violates you, no matter if it's an inconvenient time, no matter if it doesn't align with your integrity, no matter how unfair it is, my expectation is that you are going to do it because you owe me. So you got to be careful with that. When people, or if you are doing this, because a lot of times we are doing this as well, because this is how we are raised and we are groomed and we are taught, and then we do it to others, not realizing that we're carrying around patterns and behaviors that are toxic. And this is super toxic. This is super toxic and super unhealthy to, hold other people to an expectation of something that they didn't even agree to, just because you did something for them. If you're going to gift something, gift it from your heart with no expectations, that you're going to get something back from it, or an expectation that when you need, that person is going to do for you in the same way or in the same proportion, or be there in some kind of way. It's a bad, unhealthy way to behave and to think. So that's something that you really need to change. So you need to really look at, is the reason why you're not able to say no to others because you have been constantly groomed and manipulated, emotionally manipulated into doing things you do not want to do. If you don't want to do it, you have to be able to be strong enough and say, no, this is not for me. No, thank you. Guilt and shame can be a really deeply rooted emotion that stems from a lot of people's childhood. The next reason a lot of people cannot say no to others is because they feel responsible for other people's happiness. Deeply rooted, somewhere down the line, somewhere down their history, they were taught and groomed to believe that they are responsible for another person's happiness and another person's care and another person's feelings. I've said this in many videos that we are never responsible for someone else's happiness, someone else's feelings, and someone else's care. If someone is asking you to do something that is going to make them happy but is going to make you unhappy, you're not responsible for holding their happiness. You should be able to say, that is not for me, I cannot do that, and let them be responsible for their own happiness. If it makes them unhappy that you are saying no, then that is something that they are responsible for, that they are going to have to deal with, that they are responsible for working through, because those are their feelings and those are their emotions that they are responsible for. Now, this is a big one with a lot of people, and this roots back to codependency, right? I said myself that I actually grew up in this kind of dynamic, so I know it well. I was constantly just being available for others and feeling responsible for someone else's happiness. I always felt responsible for having to be able to show up and come and rescue that person, right? And it took a toll on me. It took a toll on me until I started realizing that there was a pattern and there was a behavior behind this, and that I felt responsible for this person's emotions and their unhappiness, because this person was usually unhappy and they would call me when they were unhappy and call me to kind of come in and rescue and save the day. So it was a dynamic that was like deeply rooted in my family, and I had to really take a look at it and say, wait a minute, why is it that I'm always sacrificing and I'm always meant to feel guilty if I can't deliver, right? I always had to flip my world upside down, change my schedule, make sure that I was there for whoever needed me at that point, but then I had to be there for myself. So we have to keep in mind that we're always responsible for ourselves. We're never responsible for someone else's feelings. That's a mindset that needs to be corrected. The next one that we really need to keep in mind when we can't say no to others is because we are lacking in our personal power, and we need to develop more autonomy for ourselves. Autonomy is having the ability to be able to speak for yourself and be honest and communicate your feelings clearly, precisely, bluntly if you need to, but you're able to communicate your feelings, your desires, your wants, and your needs, right? And a lot of people lack this type of development within themselves. They lack the ability to communicate clearly their feelings, emotions, wants, and needs. So they usually, what they tend to do is set it aside, repress it, drown it out, and then they'll do for others. They do what they can't give. They give what they can't give, and then they wind up feeling resentful. They wind up feeling burned out. They wind up feeling tired. They wind up feeling as if they have no power, like people are taking advantage of them. But once again, it's up to us to be able to stand up for ourselves and have that voice and take control of our own happiness, our own feelings, and our own emotions. So that's a big reason why a lot of people can't say no to certain things, because they lack that personal power of being able to express themselves and stand up for themselves. And there could be many reasons why. That also could be a childhood thing. You probably grew up in a home that you were never able to express yourself, or anytime you did express yourself, you were shut down and told like, that's not the way to behave. You shouldn't be expressing yourself. You know, this person comes first, blah, 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 blah. You know, so these are principles that are deeply ingrained into us, and they wind up becoming belief systems. So when you think about why you can't say no, it's usually deeply ingrained into our belief system. It's just not that we struggle to say no, it's that we've been groomed and conditioned over years and over time to put other people first for many different reasons, whether it's just know, and this is more of a spiritual mindset, but just know whatever is meant for you will always be for you. And people who are meant to stay in your life will always be there at the end of the day, right? When you have ups and downs with people, you know, sometimes we'll go through waves and we'll go through periods that is not the greatest, or we're not the greatest and we can show up in a certain way. And the people who are truly meant to be in our lives and stay in our lives, and people who truly love us, are always going to understand that. They're not going to go and just abandon you in your time of need, or abandon you when you are not able and capable to give to others or give to them. They're gonna be understanding. They're gonna say something along the lines like, okay, I understand, you know, maybe next time. People who are not meant to be in your life and they need to go, they're not gonna understand. They're gonna be selfish. They're gonna be resentful. They're gonna feel as if you committed a crime, right? Literally, they're gonna feel like you committed a crime towards them by rejecting them. They're gonna feel rejected, not understanding that has nothing to do with them. People who are meant to be in your life, they're gonna be more understanding, and they're gonna look at the bigger picture, and they're gonna look at your perspective. Believe that, you know, you need that time for yourself. So understand, you never lose what is meant for you, whether it's opportunity, whether it's people, whether it's a outing, right? There's always going to be a different outing. There's always going to be another opportunity, and that person should be always available if they're meant to stay in your life. So always remember that. Never feel the need to people please. You also need to be happy with yourself and content with what makes you happy. Boundaries. It's always about boundaries. Having healthy boundaries is super important, and that falls into this category as well. When you're not able to say no to others, that means you do not have a healthy set of boundaries, right? You have to have that discernment to be able to say no to what doesn't serve you, whatever it may be. We have to always remember, whenever we do not prioritize our lives, we give the green light and okay for someone to come in, take control, take that power, and prioritize our lives for us. So you have to be able to prioritize your life for what works for you. No one, and I truly mean no one, is going to know what works for you, because no one is you. A lot of us could put on a show, we could put on a smile, we can get up here and, you know, put our best foot forward, and we could be dying and depleted inside, right? And no one will ever know. And I truly mean no one. Not your spouse, not your mother, not your siblings, not your kids. Whoever it is, they will not know unless we speak up and say, I'm not good. I've been suffering in silence. I feel anxiety. I feel depression. I feel anger. I feel resentment. I feel depleted. I feel tired. I feel unheard. I feel used. Sometimes you can say that to people the closest to you, and they're like, what? Because they don't know. You put on a good act. So remember, it's up to you to prioritize your life. Do not let others do it for you. Every time we say yes to others, when we need to say no, we say no to ourselves. And we need to learn to start saying more yeses to ourselves. Stand in your power. Stand in your autonomy. Do not let people emotionally manipulate you at all. Stop people pleasing. Stand your ground. Understand your energy levels. Understanding what you're willing to give. Understanding what you cannot give. And be able to say no without shame or guilt, because there is no wrongdoing, there is no criminal activity or any type of wrongdoing that's being committed, any offense to another, when you say no. It shouldn't feel like that. It shouldn't be like that. People who love us, people who care for us, opportunities that are meant to be there, they will be there again. Anytime you say no, it should not be the end game for those situations. If it is, remember, it was not meant for you. So let it go. What's meant for you will always be for you. And that's all I have for you beautiful people today. Remember to work on yourselves, think critically, get into these topics, deep dive into them, dive a little bit deeper, get into your spirituality, and understand why you do the things you do. That's the only way to be able to get towards your best self, to your healed self, to your authentic self. We need to rip these masks off that we constantly put on, these shows that we constantly put on, and start making sure that we are living in our authentic, showing up authentic, not only for ourselves, but for others. Because every time you agree to something you don't want to agree to, not only do you hurt yourself, but you hurt other people. And sometimes we don't even realize that. right? Because we're not coming and we're not showing up on our best foot forward, and we're not showing up in our authenticity, right? And if you don't show up in your authenticity and you're pretending to be something that you're not, eventually that mask is going to fall. And that's when all problems and hell breaks loose. And you don't want that in your life. So it's best to live and operate in integrity, and best to live and operate in your authenticity. Just say no. Work on that. And that's all I have for my beautiful souls today. Keep on working on that personal development, and I will see you in my next one. Kisses and smooches. Bye.